I watched my mother rehearse grief in the front row, chin lifted, hands folded, eyes dry, while the family lawyer held a sealed envelope like a weapon. I already knew this wasn't a will. It was a trap my grandpa had built on purpose. When the lawyer said, "There are instructions your father left regarding today," my stomach dropped. The funeral was about to reveal the truth. I'm Stella, 32, living in Providence, Rhode Island, where old money hides behind brick facades and heritage is traded like stock. I work as an archivist for private collections, authenticating letters, tracing provenance, drafting transfer terms, and locking access when a legacy is safer sealed than sold. My family calls that paperwork. Grandpa called it protection. In our house, I was the one who could handle it. Mom said it like a compliment that always came with a task. Dad treated it like a guarantee. If there was a crisis, I would show up, quietly, efficiently, and without asking for anything in return. That arrangement felt normal until the night the hospital called, and normal collapsed into fluorescent light. "Miss Carter, your grandfather was brought in 20 minutes ago," the nurse said. "Massive heart attack. He might not make it." I was already grabbing my coat. In the car, I called Mom. Voicemail. "Dad?" Voicemail. I typed into our family chat. "He might not make it. Get here now." The message sat there like a flare. No one bothered to look. At a red light, my phone buzzed. Mom's reply wasn't a call. It was a text. "You're closer. Just handle it." No question, no panic, no "I'm coming." Just the familiar transfer of responsibility into my hands, like she was passing me a heavy box and walking away before I could refuse. Something inside me went cold and clear like glass. The hospital smelled like sanitizer and exhausted fear. A doctor explained the risks in careful sentences and asked about a DNR I didn't know existed. I sat beside my grandpa's bed and held his hand while machines breathed and beeped in his place. His skin was warm, but his presence felt distant, as if he had already begun to drift away. I called Dad again. He finally answered, sounding annoyed, like I had called to ask about a dinner reservation. "What's going on?" I said, "He had a massive heart attack. They're doing everything they can." "Okay," Dad replied. "Keep me posted." In the background, I heard Mom, sharp and practical. "Tell her not to sign anything without us." Dad repeated it like an order. "Don't sign anything." Then he hung up. I stared at the dark screen, realizing they weren't worried about him. They were worried about control. Hours passed in the slow torture of waiting rooms. A nurse handed me forms with boxes I didn't want to check. A resident asked questions I couldn't answer because I wasn't supposed to be alone in this. I sent another message. "He's in critical condition. Please come." It stayed unread. At some point, I stepped into the hallway and texted Mom directly, "Are you coming or not?" Her response came 20 minutes later. "We can't tonight. You know your father's schedule. Just do what needs to be done." Do what needs to be done. Like love was a chore, like grief was an errand. By morning, the doctor pulled me aside. "I'm sorry," he said. "We did everything we could." There are words that mark you permanently. My grandpa was gone. The machines fell silent, as if the room finally acknowledged the truth. I called Mom and told her. She paused, too long, too empty, then said, "We'll deal with it later." That was all. No "how are you?" No "I'm coming," no grief, just scheduling. After I left the hospital, I went to my grandpa's house because I couldn't stand the thought of strangers packing up his life without understanding what it meant. The key was still under the planter. Inside, his study felt like an archive built from patience, labeled boxes, ribbon-tied letters, journals stacked with care. He never left anything to chance. That was the detail that scared me most. On his desk, folders were arranged in a neat row, not drafts, but executed documents with notarized stamps. Beneath them lay a thick envelope in his handwriting, for legal execution only. My phone rang. Mom? I answered. She said, I heard. You're at his house. Good. Don't touch anything important. Your father and I will come by later. We need to go through it. Go through it meant take it. I'm already reviewing the paperwork, I said. You don't have the authority, she snapped, and the warmth fell off her voice like a mask. I looked at my grandpa's signatures, at the clean finality of his planning. Are you sure? I asked. She inhaled sharply. Stella, don't make it complicated. This is bigger than your feelings. There are assets, collections, access. There it was, her real mourning, the loss of leverage. That night, I didn't open the for legal execution only envelope. I put it in my bag and slept with it near the bed, like it was a passport out of a country I'd been trapped in. The next morning, Mom showed up unannounced. She didn't knock the way you knock when you feel guilt. She knocked the way you knock when you think the door belongs to you. She walked into the study wearing black and perfume, her eyes moving quickly over shelves and boxes. Oh, she said softly, he really did keep everything. He cared, I replied. She made a small scoffing sound. He hoarded. Then she reached for a box labeled Family Audio. Her fingers curled around it like it already belonged to her. I placed my hand on the lid, not dramatic, not aggressive, just present. Mom's smile tightened. What are you doing? Preserving, I said. It's literally my job. Her eyes flicked up and down my face, contempt dressed as disappointment. Your job is a cute little niche, Stella. This is real decision-making. This is value. Dad arrived 10 minutes later. He didn't hug me. He didn't ask how I was holding up. He walked straight to the desk and flipped through a folder without reading, like he was searching for a price tag. Okay, he said briskly. What's the situation? The situation, I said, my voice flat, is that Grandpa is dead? Dad's jaw flexed. I mean, with the paperwork. Mom stepped closer, lowering her voice like she was sharing a secret. We need to move quickly. People circle when someone dies. We should control this before outsiders get involved. Outsiders, as if my grandpa's friends, historians, and trustees were enemies, and the only safe hands were the ones already reaching. Dad noted, I have someone interested, a collector. He'll pay for private access, the letters, the recordings, enough to make all this worth it. Grandpa didn't want it sold, I said. Mom waved a hand. He's gone. We're the living. Don't be theatrical. The word theatrical landed like a slap because my grief was inconvenient to her timeline. I'm not signing anything, I said. Dad's eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide. I breathed in slowly, the way I do when a client tries to rewrite provenance with confidence in zero evidence. Actually, I said, I might. Mom's gaze sharpened. What does that mean? It means, I replied, you should read before you start shopping his life. Dad reached toward the executed transfer documents. I moved first, sliding them into my bag. Mom's face flashed with anger so bright it looked honest for once. You're stealing, she hissed. I'm safeguarding, I corrected. Different word, different crime. Mom's laugh was small and mean. Listen to you, acting like some hero in a museum. You're just me, I finished for her, because she'd used that line on me my whole life. Yeah, I know. Dad stepped closer, his voice low. Stella, don't make us do this the hard way. I looked at him, at the threat in his face, and something in me clicked into place. Then don't, I said. Leave. Mom's eyes widened, offended. You can't kick us out of your father's house. It's my grandpa's house, and you're not here for him. They didn't leave then. They hovered. They tried different tactics in quick succession, like flipping through a toolbox. Guilt, anger, sweetness, shame. Mom softened her voice first. Honey, you're exhausted. You're in shock. Let us handle things so you can rest. I didn't answer. Dad tried pressure. If you embarrass this family, you'll regret it. Mom tried a sharper knife. You always liked being the martyr. It's your whole personality. That one landed because it was partly true. I had built a life around being useful because being loved felt like a luxury my family didn't provide. I left before I started crying in front of them. I drove to my office, hands tight on the steering wheel, and called the family lawyer. He asked me to come in immediately. His office was quiet in a way that made my skin itch, legal quiet, the kind that says, whatever you feel, paper will decide. I placed the thick envelope on his desk. He didn't open it right away. His eyes rested on my grandpa's handwriting. Respect and caution flickered across his face. "You found it," he said. "What did he do?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted. 10 days before his passing," he replied, "your grandfather updated his estate plan. He transferred the entire private archive into a closed cultural fund. You are the managing trustee. You control access and preservation." My throat tightened. "And your mother is excluded from administrative control," he said. "No access rights under the new documents." A relief I didn't want to feel pressed against my ribs. Relief isn't pure when it comes from a loved one being unmasked. "There's also a directive for the funeral," he continued, "condition-based." "What condition?" "If his daughter attends," the lawyer said, watching my reaction, "there is an audio file to be played and explicit instructions about who may speak." My skin prickled. "What's on the audio?" The lawyer didn't offer comfort. "Evidence," he said. "Your grandfather wanted it heard publicly under the correct circumstances." When I left, Mom texted me a photo of herself outside the funeral home, dressed in black, captioned, "We'll be there. Don't make a scene." As if the scene wasn't already written. The night before the funeral, Dad called. His voice was controlled, which meant dangerous. "You met with the lawyer," he said. "Yes." "You think you're smart," he said. "You think because you file other people's secrets, you can file ours." I waited, letting his words hang. Silence is a tool. I'm good at tools. Mom's voice cut in on speaker. "Stella, stop playing games. You owe us. He was our responsibility for years." I almost laughed. Responsibility? The man who raised them, who gave them everything he could, reduced to a line item in a speech. "You didn't come," I said quietly. Mom's pause was a confession. "Don't start that again." "You weren't there," I repeated. "Not at the hospital, not when he was dying." Dad snapped. "Because you were there. That's how this works." That sentence turned my stomach. That's how this works. The family rule carved into me. Your value is your usefulness. "I'm hanging up," I said. Mom's voice sharpened instantly. "If you ruin me tomorrow—" "You already did." I ended the call. The morning of the funeral, Mom arrived early, dressed in black like she had been cast for it. She took the front row, folded her hands, and practiced the right expression. Dad stood beside her with a stiff jaw and the look of a man who hated being powerless. When I walked in, Mom hissed without turning her head. "Don't glare. People can tell when you're bitter." "People can tell when you're lying," I murmured, and kept walking. The service moved through polite, generic grief until the lawyer stood. He held the sealed envelope. The room quieted in that particular way it does when people sense money hiding beneath mourning. "There are instructions your father left regarding today," the lawyer said. Mom sat taller, ready to deliver her speech, ready to speak for a man she didn't show up to save. The lawyer opened the envelope. Paper crackled. He read steady and clear. "If my daughter is here, do not let her speak for me." A ripple moved through the room. Mom's face tightened, then froze. He continued, "Instead, play the recording I prepared." Mom stood abruptly. "No," she said, her voice rising. "This is inappropriate. My father wouldn't want—" "Your father was explicit, ma'am," the lawyer replied, calm as a locked door. He pressed play. Mom's own voice filled the room, bright and cruel in its casualness. "He won't last much longer," the recording said. Once he's gone, we'll finally move the archive. Will has people begging for access." A low murmur rolled through the chairs. Someone shifted away from Mom, as if greed carried a scent. Then her voice again, sharper, amused. "Stella will handle the hospital. She always does." My stomach flipped. That line wasn't just betrayal, it was a confession of how long they had used me. The recording ended. Silence didn't empty the room. It loaded it. Mom's mouth opened. "That's out of context," she rasped, eyes wide with panic. "That's private." "You have been instructed not to speak, ma'am," the lawyer said. Dad stepped forward, angry and embarrassed. "This is a family matter," he barked. No one defended him. People didn't shout. They simply looked away from my parents. And that quiet rejection was louder than any insult. The lawyer unfolded a second page. "Effective immediately," he read, "my daughter is excluded from any inheritance or administrative control of my private archives. She is prohibited from accessing, removing, selling, licensing, or transferring any portion of the collection. Any contest will trigger full disclosure of recorded materials relevant to her actions." Mom's face collapsed, not into grief, but into naked fear. "I appoint my granddaughter as managing trustee and sole administrator of the archive transfer," the lawyer finished. Mom turned toward me, trembling with rage. "You did this." "I didn't," I said, and my voice surprised me with its steadiness. "He did." Dad hissed, "Fix it. Tell him to stop." I looked at him, the man who couldn't be bothered to come to the hospital, and something old in me finally died without drama. "No," I said, "I'm done handling it." Mom's eyes shone, tears ready like a weapon. "You've ruined your own mother." "You ruined yourself," I replied. "I just stopped covering for you." She left the room in a rush of heels and humiliation. Dad followed, jaw clenched, refusing to look at anyone. No one stopped them. No one chased them, not even the people who used to call them good family. That evening, I went back to my archive workspace, a small climate-controlled room with acid-free boxes and quiet, the kind of quiet that feels like respect. I brought in the first box from my grandpa's study and opened it under my desk lamp. On top was a flash drive labeled in his handwriting, "Last File." I plugged it in and pressed play. His voice came through, soft but clear. "If you're hearing this, I'm not there," he said, and I could hear the smile he didn't have to perform. "I'm sorry you were alone at the hospital. I'm sorry you were told to handle it like love is a chore." My eyes burned. He continued, "I saw you. You stayed. That's all that mattered. Keep it safe. Keep it true." The file ended. The room held his words like a sealed letter. I didn't make a speech. I didn't need to. I opened a folder, wrote the first inventory line, and kept working. Hand steady, heart raw, spine finally straight. The moral settled quietly, the way real truths do. People will praise you as strong when they really mean convenient. The day you stop being convenient is the day you find out who never loved you, only what you could carry.